everyone. My name's Jeanne Rickmans and I'm Heather's publisher at Nero Books at Black Ink. I'd like to welcome you all to the launch of Ubuntu. I feel like I've copped out today by flying down to Melbourne from Sydney instead of riding a motorcycle, which is hardly in the spirit of Ubuntu. But I confess that once upon a long time ago, I was the owner of a small Peugeot 50cc scooter, but I never ventured off-road like the intrepid Heather. Heather's light bulb moment to ride across Africa is the stuff most of us can only fantasise and dream about. Her adventure, not just into her own soul, but the soul of Africa, a land rich in beauty and kindness, is exhilarating, confronting and inspiring. I'd like to personally thank Nadine Davidoff, my former publishing sister-in-arms and dear friend, who directed Heather to Nero Books. We're also proud to be publishing you today, and I hope the road to publication has been pothole and bandit-free. I'd now like to introduce Father Bob Maguire, who has so very kindly agreed to officially launch Ubuntu.
What about unfortunately, I tried to come by, by motorbike. Now, her bike, of course, is now almost consecrated for getting her around that pilgrimage. And I'm very grateful to you, because as soon as I got hold of that, even the flyer was enough for me. That's kept me going for many a talk. That has, because you see, this is the ultimate. See, I am because we are. What the? See, I almost thought I'd died and gone to heaven, because that sums everything up. And also it comes out of the place where they say the human race began. That's what they say. And the British are not happy with that. You see? Because they said, no, they're people of colour. Whereas we're white. I said, no, tell the truth. They're colourful, you're colourless. But that's sensational. Ubuntu. I've used it a few times. Where's she gone? That's another trick of mine. We tried that outside Luna Park, didn't we? We tried it outside Luna Park when we had the toy run, because it expresses everything. See, I mean, it's one thing to be religious, it's far better to be spiritual. You see what I mean? And we're parking all the religions now in a garage. They might be here somewhere. Because they need to be tinkered with, so that they follow the two commandments, which is one, use common sense, and secondly, be compassionate, which is what the book's all about, isn't it? Yeah. Not only about you personally, as everybody knows, you're as humble as a doormat, isn't it? See? Well, you and I get used to being walked over. Humble as doormats we are. And but also it's I don't know, I mean, there's an old commo. Any commos? What's his name? George Monbiot. Oh, yes. Writes in The Guardian. But I was looking for something to do. I said, don't waste these bloody people's time talking bullshit, for God's sake. Find something. So I consulted Dr. Google, who came up with Monbiot's latest, and he's old now, old commo, is that in fact we have never been so connected. Why are we so lonely? See? And I think that's what's been keeping me going for a terrible long time. Not to make people more lonely, which religion does. You see what I mean? But to try to work out what the bloody formula is, which you've got here with us beautifully. And I'm not a bike rider, but I can imagine out in the middle of nowhere, and she fell over, didn't she? And she slid down the bloody mountain, for God's sake. You had me crying my eyes out. Yeah, covered in mud, you're lying down there, the boat, the bike's lying on, and you're, you didn't say any of that, because you're a believer. She's a believer in the spirituality of serendipity.
Yeah, yep, I am, yep.
Which is coincidence.
Yeah.
More than coincidence, she believes in. That in fact things happened, and I think I'm a believer in that too, I reckon. And I reckon I've got something. I don't know if I get run over on the way home and the angel turns up and says, well, you know, this is as good as it gets, mate. and we're knocking on the door, and I think I'll be able to say, Ubuntu! In other words, I am because we are, and I think the bloke behind the door's going to repeat it. Because I think God realises there's no God unless we are. See, we're all in this together. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity of renewing my faith in humanity. And also the place that I've never had much time to go to, which is the wide open spaces, which you have. I've buried myself in South Melbourne, Port Melbourne for 40 years. But I'm finding the same things that you're finding, you know. Ubuntu rules Port Melbourne, South Melbourne, if the people are allowed to run their own towns. And the bloody developers would mind designing buildings that in fact are humane. They're meant for us, not meant for the bloody dollar. So Ubuntu to the lot of you, and Ubuntu certainly for you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now, folks, the lady herself, the author, Heather Ellis.
Awesome. It's wonderful for so many of you to turn up and help celebrate the launch of Ubuntu, One Woman's Motorcycle Odyssey across Africa. So thank you, Father Bob, for blessing Ubuntu. And so the main thing that I want to come out of this book is for them to believe in the chance encounters and coincidences which come your way on this journey called life. Because this is what happened to me on this journey. And I went there. I wasn't afraid. I believed everything good would happen to me, and everything good did. And I think if we go about our lives like that, it'll be really truly wonderful. So this the book. My journey was long. It was 15 months through 19 countries and covering 42,000 kilometres in Africa. It was a bit like a meander going all over the place rather than a straight line. The book itself has been an even longer journey that has been 20 years in the making, and I'll get to that later. About why it took so long, but. First, I would like to thank a few people who have helped make Ubuntu happen. And firstly, it's my mum. I'm not sure where she is. Yeah. My mum down here has been my strongest supporter for all those years when she read the first draft back in 1996. And the other person I'd like to thank is Annette. Where's Annette? Oh, yeah, Annette is, there she is over here. Annette, my very, very good friend who was my sounding board, and every writer needs a sounding board. And through the past 2 years in my shed, I've read chapter after chapter to Annette, and she's laughed and cried and really given me a lot of encouragement to know that I'm on track. I was on track with the way the story was developing. The other people I'd like to thank is Nadine, who I discovered by chance, as things always happen. Nadine Davidhoff is a professional editor, and she helped me really bring the spirit of Ubuntu into my story to really also Cheryl Strayed, who of course couldn't be here. She's the best-selling author of Wild, that was made into a movie starring Reese Witherspoon. She's endorsed my book, which is an amazing thing to happen to a first-time author, and I went over to attend her writing workshop in Chamonix in France in June, and I learnt so much from her about the craft of memoir. The first thing everybody asks me is, what does Ubuntu mean? And a really, really great way to sum it up is a quote from Desmond Tutu, which is in the book, but he basically says, you cannot be human all by yourself. And us being here today, we're doing a bit of Ubuntuing. We're hanging out together and we're sharing and just sharing that energy and kindness and being together and getting out on our bikes and going for a ride and all that kind of thing. That's what Ubuntu is all about. The second thing people ask me is, why did I do this trip? Well, I was sitting in a backyard barbecue in Jabiru in the Northern Territory 20 odd years ago in 1992, and I just blurted out, as you would maybe when you're here today, I'm going to ride a motorcycle through Africa. So as soon as I said that, I knew I would do it. So there's 12 months in the planning. And just before I left for the trip, I was filled with doubts, lots of fears, like what happened if the bike broke down, that kind of thing. So a couple of months before the trip, I had a travelling companion, and we travelled together to Nairobi, but we didn't get on. You know, travelling companions are so overrated. So, and he was Africa out, as some people do when they go to Africa. So he left Africa from Nairobi, and then from that point on, from Nairobi, when I was on my own, that's when this trip really, really began. The third question that people ask me about my book is, why did I take so long to write it? So anyway, I left Africa from Nairobi by cargo ship and arrived in Europe, and then I went over to London. My bike was actually broke down as I was riding to this cargo ship on the dock in Nouadhibou, Mauritania. And it broke down when it was no longer needed. It was my loyal, strong friend until the very, very final moment. So after I had it rebuilt in Germany and then rode across over to France and then ferry over to London, I worked as a motorcycle courier in London for 12 months, as you do. I wanted my journey with my motorcycle to continue, and it was a great way to make some money for the second leg of my world motorcycle journey, which was the ride home. And so I planned that ride home through Russia, Central Asia, down through China, and then through to Southeast Asia to Australia. So I got the bright idea to study Russian in Moscow over the winter of 1995-96. I didn't want to spend another winter in London currying with the wedge and with frosty fingers. So to get a 3-month visa to study in Moscow, study Russian in Moscow, I needed to have a HIV test. So I went and had the test, and it came back positive. And it's I had an unguarded moment in Africa, and that scene is all in the book. So anyway, at the time, we're talking September 1995, and this was long before there were any medications to treat the HIV that we have today. Today, people with HIV can live long and happy lives, long, productive, happy lives, and probably live longer than many of you will die of old age with the treatments that they have, which controls the virus. But that was before then. So HIV was a death sentence, and the doctor said, "Well, you've got about 5 years." So, well, that was the end of going to Moscow for the winter, which is still on my bucket list, by the way. So I thought, well, I hadn't told my parents. The big thing with HIV then, and even today, is the stigma. So you don't want to tell anyone, you don't want anyone to know about it, you don't want to be rejected. So I thought, well, okay, I won't tell anyone. I packed my motorcycle. Well, the first thing I did, getting back to the book, is I wrote the first draft of this book because I thought I was going to die, and I didn't want the extraordinary things that happened to me in Africa to die with me. So I wrote the first draft, trotted around publishers in London, but I didn't get a publishing contract because it was a first draft, and no first drafts get publishing contracts. So I packed my motorcycle because I thought, well, if I've got 5 years to live, I want one last adventure. And also, when I was on the road in Africa, these amazing things happened. I always survived, and everybody always helped me. So I thought the same thing would happen again. So off I went, and I travelled through Europe and through Central Asia, and then by train down through China, and I made it to Vietnam. I was very sick at the time, and by the time I got there, so I got on the plane, flew directly home. I hadn't told my parents about this at the time. I actually kept it from my parents for many, many years. And so by now, the new generation of HIV treatments had been discovered. So this is now, people weren't dying. So I was saved, and I came back to good health. I went to university, studied journalism, got married, had kids. And still I was living under this dark cloud. I had this dark secret I didn't want to tell anyone. And this went on for years and years and years. And about 2 years ago, I said, enough is enough. I don't want to perpetuate the stigma anymore. And I want to tell my story. I want to get it out there. While this book is not about HIV, my second one will be, and I hope you put your name down so you can come to the next launch. But this is before all of that. And and that's why it took me so long to write it. And part of now writing this book and talking about it is I have the opportunity to raise awareness of HIV and to break down the stigma, because there's still people today who are living under a dark cloud. They won't tell anyone. They are so full of fear that people will find out they have HIV, and there's nothing to be frightened of these days with the treatments. The treatments are as good as the cure. So hopefully I can do some good in that way, as well as inspire people to believe in their intuition and believe in chance encounters and coincidences. And that's how I live my life today, and the spirit of Ubuntu, hanging out together and being good friends. So
Beautiful.
Thank you very much for being here.
So we've just had the launch of Heather Ellis's Ubuntu, one woman's motorcycle odyssey across Africa. It's the first book launch I can recall that has been held in a motorbike shop. I'm not actually in the repair room here, just over my shoulder. Father Bob Maguire was our official launcher and spoke very beautifully about the spirit of Ubuntu and the idea of community. And Heather, of course, also spoke very eloquently about her journey. This is a book that's very special to us at Nero, and we wish Heather all the very best.